Your house is on my land, Linda. The proof's right here.
This is a mistake. You can't take my home.
Yeah.
Ma'am, step back. This is official.
The land grab. It began with a scream that could have shattered a windshield. I was halfway through my morning coffee when the sound ripped through the quiet of my wooded retreat. Dropping the mug, I bolted to the front yard, expecting a catastrophe. Instead, I found Linda Mitchell, clad in a silk robe and impractical heels, standing on my gravel driveway, pointing at a small orange flag like it had personally insulted her. Her face was red, her voice a high-pitched wail, and behind her, a crew of surveyors in neon vests poked around my land with GPS rods and clipboards. One of them glanced up, tipped his hard hat, and said words that unleashed a storm I'd never have predicted. "Morning, sir. We're just confirming your boundary lines. Looks like your neighbor's house is about 12 feet onto your property." I stood frozen, staring at Linda's oversized faux Tuscan mansion, its beige stucco gleaming like an unwelcome guest. I'd owned these 3 acres in Maplewood Grove for 15 years, a sanctuary I'd carved out after escaping the corporate grind. My 2-bedroom cabin, built with my own hands, sat nestled among pines and maples, a haven of peace. But 3 years ago, the Maplewood Grove Homeowners Association grandly named the Preservation Alliance because tyranny didn't fit on their letterhead, sprang up when a luxury subdivision sprouted on the hill next door. Linda, the HOA president, had decided my land fell under her aesthetic oversight, despite my never signing a single HOA document. It started small, passive-aggressive notes about my non-compliant gravel driveway, citations for my hammocks, visual disruption, and once, a threat to fine me for a birdhouse that didn't match the neighborhood's color palette. But this? Her entire house, garage, and all, squatting 12 feet onto my land? That was a new level of audacity. Those 12 feet weren't just dirt, they held my favorite maple trees, part of my well's access trench, and my driveway, which her Mercedes rolled over daily without a second thought. Linda stormed toward me, her face a mix of fury and panic. "This is a mistake," she hissed, clutching her robe. "My house was approved by the HOA and the county. You can't just redraw lines because you feel like it." I held up the surveyor's clipboard, showing the GPS data. "Linda, your garage is on my land. That's not a feeling. That's a fact." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought she'd either slap me or call the cops. Instead, she spun on her heels, marched back to her house, and slammed the door so hard a decorative shutter fell off. I thought that was the end of it. Naively, I assumed she'd admit her error and fix it quietly. 2 days later, a letter was taped to my cabin door. "Dear Mr. Thompson," it read in crisp, officious font, "Your presence on Preservation Alliance land violates our bylaws. Vacate your dwelling within 10 business days or face fines and legal action. Sincerely, Linda Mitchell, President." I read it 3 times, then burst out laughing, nearly toppling off my porch. She wasn't apologizing, she was claiming my property as HOA territory because her house was illegally built on it. It was like parking in my yard and evicting me for trespassing. The letterhead listed a law firm, Baxter & Sons, which a quick Google search revealed was run by Linda's cousin, specializing in dog bite cases and minor real estate filings. It was laughable, but it meant war. I didn't respond to Linda. Instead, I hired a real lawyer, Sarah Coleman, who didn't list tanning bed disputes among her credentials. We gathered my original deed, survey plats, county permits, and a decade's worth of photos showing my property line. Then we filed a cease and desist order, an encroachment claim, and a quiet title action. The evidence was ironclad, but I knew Linda wouldn't back down easily. A week later, I returned from the hardware store to find a city worker in my driveway, looking puzzled beside a municipal truck. "Yo, you David Thompson?" he asked, holding a clipboard. I nodded. He showed me a permit request, filed by the HOA, to demolish an illegally placed cabin structure. My cabin. I blinked. "They're trying to tear down my house." He shook his head. "Doesn't add up. This is an HOA land. I'll need to verify ownership. Sorry for the scare." I thanked him, then marched to my barn, opened a hidden floorboard compartment, and pulled out a folder. Inside was drone footage from last summer, shot by a friend. It clearly showed the boundary between my land and Linda's half-built mansion, time-stamped and geotagged. I uploaded it to a flash drive and drove to the county clerk's office. The clerk raised an eyebrow as I submitted the evidence. You sure about this? This could force a teardown order. I nodded. That's the plan. 2 days later, Linda appeared at my door with a Tupperware of what looked like brownies and a smile so forced it could have cracked glass. Can we talk, neighbor to neighbor? She said, her voice dripping with false warmth. I leaned against the doorframe. You want to move your house? Her smile faltered. That's not what I meant. I didn't take the brownies. The next morning, I found a for sale sign hammered into my driveway's edge, listing Linda's number. I replaced it with a neon orange notice of legal dispute. Then, 2 nights later, I heard engines. Peering out, I saw a moving truck in Linda's garage, men hauling boxes while she sipped wine and handed out flyers for an open house this Saturday. Fully renovated, motivated seller. She was trying to sell a house built on my land, mid-litigation. I snapped photos, called Sarah, and grinned. Selling a property with a known title defect? That's fraud. The open house was a disaster before I even got involved. By Saturday, Linda was unraveling, barking at an elderly couple for stepping on her hydrangeas, while her teenage real estate agent looked ready to quit. I set up a lawn chair across the street, sipping lemonade, and blocked the driveway with orange cones and a sign. Private property survey dispute in progress. Some buyers, drawn to drama, stayed, thinking they'd snag a bargain. Linda insisted it was a paperwork issue, but her forced grin and pulsing temple vein told another story. I didn't confront her. Instead, I handed out glossy prints of the drone footage, captioned, "Notice, this structure encroaches on private land. Legal action pending." Buyers grabbed them like souvenirs. One guy asked for 2 to show his wife. By hour 3, Linda spotted me and charged over, acrylic nails flashing. "You're ruining my sale," she shrieked. "This is harassment." I stayed calm, just informing buyers about the legal status of my property. "It's called due diligence." She spat. "You're not a lawyer." I pointed down the street. "No, but she is." Sarah pulled up in her hybrid SUV, stepped out in a blazer and jeans, and handed me a manila envelope. County clerk approved expedited proceedings. "We're fast-tracking the injunction." Linda's face collapsed. "You can't do that. This house is worth $800,000. Sarah smiled. "Then you should have built it on your land." 2 days later, a sheriff's deputy served Linda with an injunction to halt all sales, renovations, or leases pending the boundary dispute resolution. She tried to argue, but the deputy just pointed to the form. She signed, fuming. For a week, it was quiet. Too quiet. Then a county inspector knocked on my door. "You, David Thompson?" he asked, clipboard in hand. He showed me a complaint alleging I'd installed an unlicensed septic tank too close to the water table. I laughed. "You mean my root cellar? It's older than dirt." I led him to the stone-lined cellar. He poked around, flashlight in hand, and emerged annoyed. "Someone's messing with you." I nodded. "Her name's Linda." Over the next 3 weeks, Linda unleashed a barrage of false reports. Illegal burns, a fire marshal found nothing, unpermitted livestock, my dog, and a dangerous raccoon infestation, 3 squirrels fighting over a walnut. Each visit ended with officials apologizing and me documenting everything to stamps, trail cam footage, the works. I handed it all to Sarah, who grinned like it was her birthday. We filed a countersuit for harassment and malicious prosecution. Then came the bombshell. The county assessor, reviewing my complaint, found that Linda's house, built partially on my land, invalidated her entire tax parcel. Worse, her falsified building permit documents triggered a fraud investigation. I wasn't there when officials arrived at her house with measuring wheels and cameras, but I saw the aftermath. Linda pacing her lawn in slippers, yelling into 2 phones, waving a folder like it was her last defense. That night, an anonymous letter appeared in my mailbox. "You've made a powerful enemy. Enjoy it while it lasts." I tossed it onto the firewood pile. The HOA meeting was next. Linda, despite the chaos, still ran them like a dictator. I wasn't a member, but friendly neighbors invited me as a guest. I sat in the back, hat low, as Linda, in a red pantsuit, preached about community standards. Then Margaret, a retired librarian with a sharp tongue, raised her hand. "Linda, are you asking us to pay for your lawsuit with HOA funds?" She held up the injunction and read, Your house is illegally built, and you misrepresented the parcel lines. That's fraud. Linda stammered, but the board voted against her, refusing to fund her defense. As she stormed out, I called after her. Sounds like eviction's still on the table. I tracked down the original developer, Walter Grayson, now retired in a golf community 3 states away. At 78, he was sharp and eager to help when I mentioned Linda. He had records, blueprints, plats, and a restrictive covenant filed before the HOA existed. It stated that any structure encroaching over 8 feet onto another's property, uncorrected for a year, could be forfeited. Linda's house, 12 feet over my line for 3 years, qualified. Sarah filed a motion to enforce the covenant, escalating the case to a potential property seizure. Linda's reaction was epic. Neighbors reported screaming so loud they thought a mountain lion was loose. She showed up at my cabin with 2 HOA compliance goons, begging me to stop. "This is my home, my investment," she pleaded. I crossed my arms. "Linda, you tried to demolish my cabin. You filed 7 false reports. You don't get to play victim." She demanded a settlement. I said, "Get off my land." She left, pale and trembling. Her final gambit was a forged deed claiming she'd bought a buffer strip between our properties. The font was off, the notary stamp upside down, and the witness signature was her own. Sarah requested a forensic analysis, and we braced for more chaos. Instead, Linda tried a PR stunt, digging a community dog park on HOA land, hosting barbecues with face painting and petting zoos. Some neighbors softened, swayed by free ribs. But Margaret called me. She's holding a secret vote to retroactively approve encroachments, including hers. I got Walter on a video call. He still held a sliver of land rights, enough to demand a board seat. At the meeting, Margaret suspended standard procedure, and Walter appeared on screen, calling out Linda's schemes. The vote to delay bylaw changes passed, cornering her. The night before the court date, Linda broke into my barn, rifling through files. My hidden camera caught her no mask, just a flashlight and desperation. Sarah added the footage to our case file, requesting full damages. In court, Linda's new lawyer floundered. The judge, holding the barn footage, ruled in my favor. It was mine, lock, stock, and chandeliers. The courtroom went silent. Linda whispered, "That's not fair," before crumpling. Her appeal was dismissed. Outside, Sarah smirked. "Congrats, David. You own a house you'll never live in." She was right. The place was gaudy columns supporting nothing, granite everywhere. I changed the locks, taped a legal notice to the door, and watched Linda pace the curb, dialing frantically. That night, at 2:17 a.m., my cameras caught her sneaking into the backyard, yelling at the house like it betrayed her. She kicked a patio chair and sobbed. The sheriff's deputy gave her a choice: leave or be escorted. She left, still crying. In the house's office, I found a folder behind HOA records receipts showing Linda had siphoned HOA funds for vacations, Botox, and fake contractors. I called Margaret. She spread the documents across the kitchen island, muttering. That's why the tennis court flooded. At an emergency HOA meeting, she exposed Linda's embezzlement. The board voted unanimously to remove her. Linda, in a silk blouse, tried to argue but left under glares. 3 days later, Linda filed for bankruptcy, her loans collapsing without the house's value. I sold the mansion not out of spite. Okay, a little spite, but because I hated its staircase. The profits upgraded my cabin, solar panels, a new roof, and a sturdier porch swing. I donated the rest to fix the HOA clubhouse Linda had neglected. She moved to a rental 10 miles away, tried joining another HOA, and was blacklisted. Her Citizens Against Property Tyranny Facebook group had 2 members, her and a Wi-Fi conspiracy theorist. Peace returned. The new owners of the mansion, a quiet couple, tore down its useless balcony with my blessing. I built a greenhouse, restored my fence, and added a keypad gate. Then a blue envelope Aravedno return address, just a photo of my cabin, taken 3 nights ago from my woods. I sighed, suspecting Linda. Hours later, a deputy confirmed it. Linda was arrested for credit card fraud, wire fraud, and mail tampering. She'd forged another fake deed, flagged by the system. She pleaded no contest, receiving probation and counseling. Her empire was dust. At a summer HOA barbecue, Margaret handed me a plate of brisket and an envelope. Inside was a unanimous board motion. I was exempt from HOA oversight forever. No dues, no citations, just freedom. I laughed, nearly dropping it in my pond. Linda had tried to erase me, but she'd exposed the HOA's flaws. It wasn't a kingdom, Anna Maria, it was a community. A year later, an email arrived from a stranger 2 states over, facing his own Linda problem. My story had spread through online forums, inspiring others. He won his fight and sent me a photo of a plaque by his mailbox. This property is HOA resistant. Thanks, David Thompson. I snorted coffee, laughing. Linda's downfall sparked a quiet resistance. The HOA became a shield, not a sword. One evening, as I sat on my rebuilt porch swing, a new couple approached, holding a neighborhood brochure. Is it true the HOA used to run people off? The husband asked. I sipped my beer. Used to. Someone stopped them. I glanced at the trees where Linda's mansion once loomed. They thanked me and left. My dog barked at a squirrel. The wind chimes sang. Peace was mine again. Linda once said I didn't belong. Funny thing, she never owned this place to begin with. What do you think about David's fight against Linda's overreach? Have you ever dealt with a Karen in your own life, wielding power to bully or control? Share your thoughts in the comments below, especially on how far someone should go to stand up to injustice or entitlement. Let's hear your perspective.